Wait, what if I told you that a $1,400 stimulus check could be coming back and that SSI and SSDI recipients might be first in line? Take a second and really think about that. Could extra money finally be on the way at a time when groceries cost more, rent is higher, and everyday expenses keep climbing? Is this real relief or just another rumor making the rounds online? And most importantly, does this apply to you or someone you love? Before we get into all the details, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any important updates about stimulus payments, Social Security, SSI, SSDI, or financial relief news that could directly impact your wallet. If information like this matters to you, supporting the channel helps make sure it keeps reaching the people who need it most. Now, let's slow things down for a moment because there's a lot of confusion out there right now. People are hearing the words $1, 400 stimulus check and immediately asking the same questions. Is Congress actually talking about sending out new checks? Why are SSI and SSDI being mentioned first? When could this happen, and is there anything you need to do to qualify? These are reasonable questions, especially after everything we've been through over the past few years. If you remember the last time stimulus checks went out, $1,400 wasn't just a random number. For many households, that amount meant catching up on overdue bills, buying medication without stressing, fixing a car that had been ignored for months, or simply breathing a little easier. For people living on fixed incomes, especially those receiving SSI or SSDI, that money wasn't extra, it was essential. So, hearing that this exact amount is being discussed again has people paying very close attention. Right now, the conversation around a possible $1,400 payment is gaining traction for a reason. Lawmakers are increasingly aware of the pressure seniors, disabled individuals, and low income Americans are facing. Inflation may have cooled slightly in headlines, but the reality at the checkout counter tells a different story. Prices are still high, benefits have limits, and many people feel like their monthly checks just don't stretch the way they once did. This is where SSI and SSDI come into the spotlight. Historically, when relief programs roll out, these groups are often prioritized because they represent some of the most financially vulnerable Americans. People on SSI, which supports low-income seniors and disabled individuals, and those on SSDI, who are unable to work due to disability, typically rely on fixed monthly payments that don't always adjust quickly enough to keep up with rising costs. That's why discussions about financial relief often start with them. You might be asking yourself right now, why would SSI and SSDI be first in line this time? The answer comes down to targeting relief where it's needed most. When lawmakers consider economic assistance, they look at who is being hit hardest. Individuals living on disability benefits often have little to no flexibility in their budgets. They can't simply take on extra work hours or switch jobs to earn more. When rent goes up or food prices spike, there's nowhere else for the money to come from. Another reason these groups are being talked about first is administrative efficiency. The government already has direct deposit information on file for most SSI and SSDI recipients. That means if a stimulus payment were approved, distribution could happen faster. No complicated applications, no extra forms, no waiting months just to prove eligibility. That alone makes these programs an easier starting point when time is critical. But let's address the big question everyone is thinking about. Is this $1,400 stimulus check guaranteed? Right now, the honest answer is no. There is no officially signed legislation confirming new stimulus payments at this exact moment. However, ongoing discussions, proposals, and growing public pressure are what keep this topic alive. Economic stress hasn't disappeared, and lawmakers know that voters are paying attention. What makes this situation different from past rumors is the consistency of the amount being discussed. When you hear the same figure repeatedly, $1 for 100, it's often because it already exists as a precedent. Lawmakers don't have to invent a new framework. They know how it worked before, they know who qualified, and they know how quickly it helped. That familiarity makes it easier for serious discussions to take place behind the scenes. Think about your own situation for a moment. What would an extra $1,400 mean for you right now? Would it help cover utilities, medical expenses, groceries for the month, emergency savings that never seem to grow? For many people watching this video, that money wouldn't be spent on luxury. It would go straight into survival and stability. And that's exactly the argument being made by advocates pushing for renewed stimulus support. Another concern people keep asking about is timing. If something like this were approved, when would payments actually go out? While there's no confirmed timeline yet, past stimulus rollouts give us some clues. Once legislation is passed and signed, initial payments often begin within weeks, not months. SSI and SSDI recipients would likely see payments automatically, just as they did previously, without needing to file anything new. Of course, misinformation spreads fast, especially on social media. Some posts make it sound like checks are already on the way, while others claim it's all fake. The truth usually sits somewhere in the middle. No payment is approved yet, but the conversation is real, and it's happening at levels that matter. Ignoring that would be a mistake, especially if you depend on benefits to make ends meet. It's also important to understand that economic relief doesn't always come in just one form. Sometimes it's a direct check. Other times it's tax credits, benefit increases, or emergency assistance programs. However, direct payments remain one of the fastest and most effective ways to provide immediate help. That's why they continue to be discussed whenever financial pressure builds nationwide. Another factor pushing this discussion forward is voter awareness. People are far more informed now than they were years ago. They track legislation, share updates, and hold leaders accountable online. When millions of Americans openly talk about struggling despite working hard or living responsibly, it creates pressure that lawmakers can't completely ignore. That pressure often translates into policy conversations we start hearing about through leaks and insider reports. Some viewers might wonder whether income limits would apply again. If a $1,400 check were approved, it's highly likely that income thresholds would return, similar to previous stimulus payments. SSI and SSDI recipients typically fall well within those limits, which is another reason they're considered first. The goal is to get relief to people who truly need it without complicated verification processes slowing everything down. You may also be thinking about how this could affect other benefits. Would a stimulus check reduce SSI or SSDI payments? In the past, stimulus checks were not counted as income for benefit eligibility purposes. That meant recipients could receive the money without worrying about losing monthly benefits. While future legislation would need to clearly state this again, history suggests protections would be included. As we move forward, the most important thing you can do is stay informed. Don't rely on a single post or headline. Watch for official updates, pay attention to credible sources, and be cautious of anyone asking for personal information or claiming they can help you get your check faster. If a stimulus payment happens, it will come automatically from official government channels. Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. Do you feel like your monthly income truly reflects the cost of living today? Or does it feel like every year it gets harder to keep up no matter how careful you are? These are the questions lawmakers are being forced to confront, especially